You had Nate Thurman, you had Wilt Chamberlain. And when I came along to play basketball,
there are players who changed basketball by scoring, and there are a few who changed it by thinking. Oscar Robertson belonged to the second kind. Calm eyes, measured steps, and a mind that never rushed. He turned chaos into rhythm. In the 1960s, when the league was a storm of giants and muscle, the Big O was the man who slowed the wind down and made time work for him. He wasn't built like Wilt Chamberlain, nor did he jump like Elgin Baylor. Yet every night, the game bent to his logic. He became the first man in history to average a triple-double for an entire season, a record that stood for decades. But what few remember is how often he was tested by giants who made him rethink everything he knew about control, power, and patience. There were nights when the paint felt like a cage guarded by Wilt, and others when Bill Russell's defense turned every pass into a calculation. Jerry West pushed him to stay composed when everything burned around him. Baylor forced him to keep the game grounded when art defied gravity. And in Milwaukee, he found not an enemy but a mirror. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the young center whose skyhook completed his geometry of perfection. Oscar never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His response to greatness was precision. His revenge was rhythm. And when asked today about the toughest men he ever faced, his answer isn't about fear, it's about respect. Because only those who forced him to play smarter truly earned a place in his memory. This is the story of Oscar Robertson and the 5 opponents who made his perfect game possible. The first name that always comes to Oscar Robertson's mind is Wilt Chamberlain, the giant who made the court feel smaller. Every time Oscar faced him, the paint wasn't a place, it was a warning. Wilt's presence alone changed how offenses worked. He didn't just block shots, he blocked ideas. In those early 1960s matchups between the Cincinnati Royals and the Philadelphia Warriors, Oscar realized that you couldn't beat Wilt by strength. You had to beat him by timing. Chamberlain could score over 50 points and grab more than 20 rebounds, yet Oscar stayed calm. He turned every possession into a chess move, a dribble to draw Wilt 2 steps out, a pass that reached the open man a second before the big hand came down. There was one night when Wilt dominated everything near the rim, and Robertson decided to stop attacking inside. Instead, he orchestrated the game from mid-range, slicing through with quick passes, using screens to make Wilt move his feet. Slowly, the rhythm shifted. The big man still towered, but the control belonged to the Big O. What impressed Oscar most wasn't just Wilt's size, but his endurance. Game after game, minute after minute, Wilt never slowed down. Facing him demanded complete focus. One lapse, and you were buried. Years later, Robertson still described him not as a rival, but as a test of intelligence. Wilt Chamberlain forced everyone to adapt, even those who thought they had nothing left to learn. And for Oscar Robertson, he was the first man to prove that power without patience could never win against a mind that played in rhythm. If Wilt Chamberlain tested Oscar Robertson's strength, Bill Russell tested his discipline. Every time the Cincinnati Royals met the Boston Celtics, Oscar entered a different kind of battle, not one of muscle, but of thought. Russell's defense wasn't just about blocking shots, it was about removing space. He made the court feel smaller, smarter, more controlled. Russell studied every player like a scientist. He knew where you wanted to go before you even dribbled. When Oscar tried to run the fast break, Russell would already be there, cutting off passing lanes, forcing him to hesitate for just a second, and that second was enough. It was chess disguised as basketball. So Oscar changed the game. Instead of forcing plays, he simplified everything. 2 dribbles, 1 clean pass, the right shot. He learned to move before the defense formed, to see the open man before Russell's trap appeared. It wasn't about flash, it was about clarity. And on the rare nights when Oscar broke through the Celtics' wall, he knew he had earned every inch. What stayed with him most was Russell's calm. The man never shouted, never lost control. He played with quiet certainty, and that mirrored Oscar's own nature. After years of facing him, Robertson realized something powerful. Russell didn't dominate through fear, he dominated through intelligence. When people asked Oscar who taught him the true meaning of composure, he never hesitated. It wasn't a guard, it wasn't a scorer. It was Bill Russell, the man who made defense feel like philosophy. If Bill Russell challenged Oscar Robertson's patience, Jerry West tested his nerve. Their duels were never quiet, they were a clash between two men who demanded perfection from themselves. West was the storm to Oscar's calm, a shooter whose release was pure, fast, and unshakable. Every possession against him felt like a heartbeat you couldn't miss. When the Royals met the Lakers, the rhythm of the game changed. West could hit from anywhere: pull-ups, fadeaways, fast break daggers. He forced Oscar to stay poised, to slow down the chaos when everything around him caught fire. In those moments, the Big O became a conductor, not a scorer. He used pace as a weapon, silencing momentum with precision passes and steady hands. One night in Los Angeles, West caught fire early, scoring over 20 in the first half. The crowd roared, the game tilted, but Oscar didn't blink. He answered not with speed, but with order, drawing fouls, running half-court sets, keeping the ball out of West's rhythm. By the fourth quarter, the game was back on his terms. That was Robertson's quiet genius. He didn't fight emotion with emotion, he fought it with control. Years later, Oscar would say that Jerry West wasn't just a rival, he was a mirror. Both men chased excellence, though in different ways. West burned brighter, Robertson burned longer. Each pushed the other toward a higher standard that neither could reach alone. For the Big O, Jerry West represented the art of pressure, the reminder that even in chaos, the calmest player always writes the ending. If Jerry West embodied precision, Elgin Baylor embodied freedom. He was the first man Oscar Robertson saw who made basketball look like flight. Baylor didn't just play above the rim, he painted pictures there. When he jumped, time seemed to bend. For the Big O, who built his game on logic and rhythm, facing Baylor felt like facing the wind. Every matchup between the Royals and the Lakers became a study in contrast. Oscar's world was grounded, deliberate, designed. Baylor's was chaos wrapped in grace. One spin, one hang in the air, and the defense lost all sense of gravity. Oscar realized that to survive those nights, he couldn't compete in the air, he had to own the ground. So he slowed the pace, turned each possession into structure, forced Baylor to defend as hard as he attacked. While others tried to match the Lakers' energy, Oscar went the opposite way. He drained the tempo, used patience like armor, and made every basket feel earned. It wasn't about stopping Baylor, no one could, it was about controlling the flow around him. There was a game where Baylor scored over 40, yet Oscar's team won by holding rhythm. That night, the Big O understood something permanent: true strength isn't about matching brilliance, it's about balancing it. Baylor's artistry demanded respect, but it also reminded Oscar why he valued precision, because without control, even beauty fades. For Oscar Robertson, Elgin Baylor was proof that greatness could take many forms. One lived in the air, the other on the ground, and the game was richer for both. By the time Oscar Robertson met Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he was no longer chasing rivals, he was shaping them. Kareem was still Lulcine Dor then, a young center with soft hands and a skyhook that touched the ceiling. Their first meetings were teacher and student, mind and height, wisdom and youth. But when Oscar joined Milwaukee, that balance became something rare: harmony. Kareem's size and elegance transformed the Bucks' offense. Every time Oscar brought the ball up, he already knew where the next point would come from. A single glance, a soft pass into the post, and the skyhook did the rest. It was the perfect fusion of rhythm and geometry, the calm vision of the Big O meeting the impossible reach of Kareem. Oscar admired the young star's focus. Kareem didn't waste motion, didn't play for noise. He reminded Oscar of himself a decade earlier: disciplined, thoughtful, untouched by chaos. Together, they built one of the most efficient teams in league history, capturing the championship that had eluded Oscar for years. But beyond the trophies, what mattered most was respect. Oscar had spent his career facing giants: Wilt's power, Russell's mind, West's fire, Baylor's artistry. Kareem brought something different: balance. With him, Oscar finally saw his own philosophy reflected in another player: control without fear, excellence without ego. When people asked him later about the strongest men he ever faced, Oscar always included Kareem. Because strength wasn't just size or numbers. It was the grace to stay steady when the game sped up. And in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the Big O found not only a rival, but a continuation of himself. When Oscar Robertson looks back on his journey, he doesn't talk about the records first. He talks about the men who shaped the game around him. Wilt Chamberlain's power, Bill Russell's discipline, Jerry West's fire, Elgin Baylor's creativity, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's balance together, they formed the world the Big O had to master. Each one forced him to evolve, to see basketball not just as motion but as design. Oscar's genius was never about flash. It was about understanding time, when to speed up, when to stop, when to let silence speak. He played the game like a clockmaker, turning gears no one else could see. Those 5 opponents didn't just challenge him, they completed the map of what greatness meant in the 1960s and early 1970s. They were reminders that dominance comes in many forms: raw force, quiet intellect, burning emotion, pure art, and perfect calm. In the end, the Big O stood not as the loudest legend, but as the most measured one. His triple-doubles weren't statistics, they were proof that balance could win against chaos. Even now, when he's asked who the strongest players were, he doesn't answer with a single name. He answers with gratitude. Because every rival he faced left a fingerprint on his craft. For Oscar Robertson, strength was never about outscoring the man in front of you. It was about staying true to your rhythm when the whole world tried to rush you. Which of these 5 do you think pushed the Big O the hardest, and why? Tell us your pick below, and subscribe if you still believe basketball was once played with thought as much as power.